Parents of Reddit, what's the most embarrassing thing your child has done in public? As I was changing my pad in the stall of a crowded restroom. My toddler, "It's okay mommy, I still use my diapers too," got a lot of laughs from the other ladies in the bathroom for that one. My wife and I were in Vegas for work. When my son was about 3, we hired a babysitter so we could go out to dinner. The babysitter arrived as we were changing my son, and the second the hotel room door opened he sprinted. It caught the sitter off guard and my son got a good head start. He ran down 2 hallways completely nude with us running behind him. Before we managed to catch up and grab him, he ran by several other guests, including a group of young men who were cheering him on. On the way back he repeatedly yelled, "Everybody sees my sis wedge." In retrospect it's hilarious. At the time it was not. This was back in 1998. I live in a fairly small town in British Columbia, Canada. It is about 99.9% white people. I had my daughter at the grocery store and there was a person of color at the checkout. My 2-year-old pointed at her and said, "Oprah, Oprah." I died. My soul left my body, completely full of grace. The lady laughed and then said, "Oh, I wish I was Oprah." Pass very large woman in Christmas. Crowded grocery aisle. As the cart is passing, my daughter loudly exclaims her boobs are huge. Felt my soul leave my body from embarrassment. Not my child, but my nephew. My mom, older sister and I were wedding dress shopping for my upcoming wedding 15 years ago. My sister's husband was at work, so she brought along my 3-year-old nephew, who would end up being my ring bearer. At the bridal place there are mirrors everywhere. As the 3 of us are talking about the dress I was trying on, we realize that my nephew was being too quiet. We look over and he had his back to one of the mirrors, bent over, pants around his ankles, and he was mooning himself. I laughed so hard I started crying. But my sister was mortified. I was trying to install my son's car seat in an airplane seat when he was 2. I want to say he was 2. Anyway, he was a little peanut. I had parked him in the aisle seat while I tried to buckle his car seat into the window seat, and suddenly I hear laughing. I look up and realize he is standing in the aisle, pants pulled down his fat little legs, shaking his chubby buns for the flight attendants, who were laughing hysterically. My 5 female and I, 29 female, sign up for karate. Her class goes first, while I read a book in the seats in the back, and then my class, while she waits with a coloring book. Lots of other families in our classes do the same arrangement, while I'm at the very front of the room. I hear another parent at the back of the room, about 40 students and parents in between, tell my daughter that she didn't see us in class the night prior. 5-year-old. I know. My mom had the poopy poops so bad, you would not believe it. She was moaning in the bathroom for hours. I had to drop out of karate and change my name because I did not drop dead of embarrassment like I wanted to. We had a layover with our 4-year-old at DFW, you know, the high capacity international airport. We were in the people mover when I looked down and saw him licking the handrail. Other parents were staring with shocks and giggles. We later had to potty, so we went to the men's room. He dropped his pants to his ankles like a lot of kids do. Not the embarrassing part. I looked away for a few seconds, then looked back to see he was supporting himself by propping both of his hands up inside the urinal. Thankfully this was all pre-COVID, but I'm pretty sure his immune system is now titanium. Have a couple. Oldest had his first and only band concert. He spent a good part of the performance with a drumstick up his nose. Daughter, around 2, didn't like the clothes I put on her, decided to strip down to her diaper and run out of the post office. While we were waiting in line, my hands were full with the baby and packages. Another woman ran after and grabbed her for me. My oldest had a talent for finding hard surfaces with his head. He smacked into a door frame at preschool when he fell off a bouncy horse and had a huge goose egg in the middle of his forehead. Gravity did its thing and the blood in the goose egg slid down his face, blacking both eyes. A few days after, he looked like he went 3 rounds with Mike Tyson. He was at the airport with his aunt and cousin waiting for grandma to get off the plane. A lady said, "Oh, you have 2 beautiful children." He could have said, "Oh, this is my aunt," or "she's my cousin." Instead, he looked up at her sadly with 2 black eyes and said, "I don't belong to these people." His aunt hissed, "You're gonna get me arrested." Oh god. When my daughter was 3, she suddenly got pretty sick, enough for me to take her to a walk-in. But it was a busy time of day, so I decided to go to this more out of the way clinic so I could get her looked at faster. Wouldn't you know it, an old high school classmate of mine that I did not enjoy as a person at all walked in and sat directly across from us. I know he recognized me cause he made eye contact and did the slight nod. So quick background, I drank a lot of sugary drinks before I had my daughter and my teeth deteriorated as a result. I didn't have insurance until my daughter was 2.5, so I hadn't started the process of fixing them quite yet. This precious child of mine, in the middle of laying in my lap whimpering, looked straight up at me and said, "Mommy, why do your teeth look dead in this quad A waiting room?" With my nemesis from years ago staring directly at me. I will never recover. It's been years and my teeth are perfect again, but it still haunts me. I love her so much, the little eater. I forgot to add what I did in the moment. I turned red as a tomato and stuttered out some kind of reply like, "Because mommy smokes salad, shush baby, it's rude to talk about teeth, ugh." I feel like it wasn't even a good response, hahaha. Not really embarrassing for me or my daughter, but we were in the grocery store a few years ago. I was picking out some beer and standing not far from a nervous looking guy I'm pretty sure was under 21. My daughter looks at him and says, "Daddy, what's that boy doing?" The guy gets this embarrassed look on his face and runs off of the aisle. In this case, I was the embarrassing child 30 something years ago. I was a huge nerd and had recently heard that white things reflect all light, while black things absorb all light. Observing a group of black people standing outside on the middle of the summertime, I exclaimed, "Man, I'd hate to be a black person. They must get hot in the summer." Still haunts me when I think about it. One day when my eldest was about 6, he woke up claiming he was sick. He was groggy and a little warm and complained of a scratchy throat. So I kept him home from school and called in sick to work. I put him back to bed and sat down to play a video game while the kid slept. Around 10 AM the kid has not only not fallen back asleep, he's bouncing around the house giddily. So I decide he's not sick after all and needs to go to school. It takes me about 10 minutes to find a save point, and then I save, get him dressed, and drive him over. When we walk in the school office, the receptionist greets us and goes to check the kid in. As per procedure, she asks us why my son is late arriving at school. Before I can open my mouth, my darling son says, "Oh, I'm late because mom was playing video games." I don't remember the details of how I tried to salvage that, but I remember the receptionist didn't buy it. I might have ruined the kid's free day off, but he got me back. At the Smithsonian Museum in DC, outside just before the steps, while waiting for my husband to bring TR van up and pick us up, my son decided it was the perfect time to do his sand people impression. He grabs my hand and starts making the sounds they make in Star Wars and running around me in circles, just as a big group of tourists get close with cameras around their necks and everything. This sounds bad, but I think they were Japanese maybe. My son just kept running in circles making that sound. The group stood and filmed for a few minutes as my kid was laughing and continuing his performance. Finally I made full eye contact with one of the men in the group and did the crazy circle around my ear and pointed to my kid, and the guy nodded at me and went ROHH, then looked sad and said something to the others in another language and they started walking away. Then my son stopped his performance. I told my son I had to make them think you were crazy. He said it was fun. My son is 19 and remembers this and has no shame over it. Well, I'm not a parent, but I'll never forget being at Chuck Cheese, and there was this family with like 6 young children, roughly ages 4 to 10. They were all eating pizza in a booth and only the mom was supervising. IDK where the father was, but he was in the restaurant. The mom left the table for about 5 minutes to go get more tokens or something, and the 6 kids were alone at the table acting like animals, screaming, tossing food, etc. Then, one kid gets up and literally took a shit on the table, while all the other kids at the table either went ew or laughed. I'm with my little cousin at a nearby table, and I'm just watching the entire thing play out. Mom comes back and sees there is a shit on the table. She grabs the kid that did it and told the rest of the kids they are leaving. They just got up and left without saying anything to the staff. Long story short, a staff member saw it and got his manager involved. They cleaned it up and presumably tried finding out who the lady was. My daughter at 3 was a flower girl in my brother-in-law's wedding. Beautiful wedding at a Catholic church. Somewhat long ceremony. The priest is speaking to the couple, and during a quiet moment my daughter starts singing out loud the chorus to "Everybody Poops." Another time we were in a checkout line and this big burly guy with tats and a chain necklace is in front of us. My daughter asked me very loudly why him wearing a necklace like a princess. This is a story my mom told me about me when I was 4 years old. I woke up in the middle of the night and came to the living room where my mom was watching a documentary about dwarfism. One of the subjects that was touched on was how they were bullied. My mom took this as a teaching moment about accepting others' differences and I should never bully someone because of how they look, and particularly not because of their height. Fast forward 6 months. My mom has all but completely forgotten about this interaction and is in line at the grocery store holding me. She's holding me in such a way that I'm facing behind her. She feels me lean forward and turns her head just in time to see me with my finger pointed accusingly at the random person behind me. I say, very sternly and with authority, "If you're ever mean to a dwarf, I'll suck your brains out with a fork." She still doesn't know where I got the idea that one could suck another's brains out with a fork. It was my grandfather's funeral, and we were all in the church. My infant son had not pooped for almost a week. In the middle of one of the eulogies he unleashed a week's worth of poo into his nappy with the loudest fart. It leaked everywhere and got on my husband, who was holding him. My gorgeous husband took him out of the church and cleaned him up. And when the funeral was over I came out to find my son in a nappy and wrapped in a blanket because his clothes were covered. Everyone had a good laugh, but I was mortified for a little. My grandfather would have found it hilarious though, and was probably laughing in heaven. My daughter once got off a ride at Disneyland. She wanted to go on again, but did he want to wait? Threw a got screamed ran from me. I had to run fast and grab her, and she was kicking and screaming and everybody thought I was trying to kidnap her. I had to show them my phone with pictures of us and say I'm her dad. She stopped crying cause she realized they would have taken her from me thinking I was kidnapping her. I was so embarrassed though my wife was getting us churros with the other little ones. I'm the child in this story, but according to my mom, when I was about 4, I was super excited about learning to read and was in a phase of reading simple phrases out loud everywhere I went. I've always had a loud, carrying voice. Apparently my dad took me to the grocery store and, while waiting in the checkout line and sitting in the cart, I loudly read off of a tabloid, "How to get more out of your man in bed." What does that mean, Daddy? My dad said he felt like the store went silent and everyone stared at him, waiting to see how he'd answer. I'm guessing that's mostly just his imagination. At last, he said, "It's for women who are tired of their husbands hogging the covers and want more blanket." Good save, Dad. Not a parent, but this happened to my mother and brother. When my brother was around 3 to 4 my mom would still wipe his butt after pooping, so they were shopping at whatever store and my brother had to go to the bathroom. She told him to use the men's room and she would be in the next aisle waiting for him. Little did she know this was a number 2 trip, not a number 1 trip. All of a sudden she sees my brother coming out of the bathroom, pants around his ankles, screaming, "Mom, come wipe my butt." The way my family tells it is my mom just kinda looked around at the other people in the aisle and shrugged and walked away pretending it wasn't her kid before she walked around the barrier to go get him. My daughter 4 had went on a field trip at her preschool where they were hiking through the woods and really needed to go pee, and a helper, another kid's parent, said just go over there, no one is looking. Then a few days later, while she was outside playing with the neighborhood kids, she dropped Tro in front of the neighbor's house to try and pee in their front yard. I ran and grabbed her and pulled up her pants and took her inside. She explained everything, but I was completely taken aback because I know I had never shown her that. My daughter did not understand nuanced situations at that age, so she thought if she could do it there she could do it anywhere.